We want an effective police service in the UK.
Yeah.
That's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
That's why I hold them to account. That's why I highlight their mistakes, their errors, their inefficiencies, because the public deserve a competent police service that they can trust and be confident that they will do their job properly. But at the moment, it's completely right to say that policing, in many regards, is in crisis.
Yeah, this has come down from the top level, Jeremy. Someone has said, do not hand this information to the... Look, there's a lot of egos here. Egos on every job. And I've spoken about this for a long time. They then went to Lancashire Constabulary, and then later on a meeting was held, and they agreed to have us up there. They said, as long as you work under us, then that's absolutely fine.
As soon as she was reported missing, following the information that was provided to the police by her partner Paul, she was immediately treated as a MISPA. Those hypotheses included the one that she possibly could have gone into the river, that there could have been third-party involvement, At the initial stages, based on the information I received...
I'm not aware of how she got from her home area to the village, but we believe she made on foot with the dog to the centre.
The SIO, Rebecca Smith, only came on board on the Monday, so the search by then was 4 days old. And she, of course, very stridently at the press conference on Wednesday, reaffirmed their working hypothesis that that Nicola went into the river. And again, she was very firm in saying no evidence of criminality.
I made it clear that it was my working hypothesis at that time, based with all the facts. This has been misconstrued in the press and said that that was what I said. I said that was my main working hypothesis at that time. That remains my main working hypothesis.
So Lancashire Police, as we know, went to Nicola's home on the 10th of January, and that matter is still under investigation. Now, the fact that that news breaks this week, in the same week that we discovered that the Metropolitan Police could and should have arrested Wayne Cousins for indecent exposure before he kidnapped and murdered Sarah Everard, there is a big issue here. Why are the police appearing to be incapable of swiftly and effectively investigating matters which are not huge, great, complex inquiries?
Moving on to Fitbit, as I know this has been of interest. Unfortunately, despite many technicians and specialists looking at this, there is no further information that we can gain from that because it hadn't been synced for a number of days. With the information that we have received and reviewed, there is not a single piece of information or evidence to suggest that there is any third-party involvement in this investigation. So there is no miscommunication about the identification of who was in that field. A witness that knows her had the last sighting, and that was at the upper field. I'm quite confident it is around that time. At this stage, none of that dash cam has indicated that Nicola is there.
At this stage, nobody, none of that dash cam has indicated that Nicola is there.
Whilst other people may speculate and spread rumours, in terms of persistent myths that keep being referred to in the press, but from my perspective, being in possession of all the facts and information of this case, I do not believe that to be suspicious. I myself don't find it suspicious that fishermen would be in the area of a river that morning. They are not necessarily suspicious to me, and all this speculation and rumour is affecting them about specific individual vulnerabilities specific to this case and Nicola.
And something around Nicola's vulnerabilities.
There's lots of egos playing here, and it will come out in the IPCC inquiry. Whoever instructed the police not to tell us that she was there, Nicola was where she, about this alcohol issue, it will come out in this inquiry.
What is going on? Where is the common sense in British policing? Where is the robustness to deal with things properly, simply, effectively?
This is where we'll see if the police are corrupt and or if there's a cover-up going on. I'm not alleging they are. Just let me clarify. I'm not asserting such, but now I feel the need to be more specific. Get ahead of it. If so, to diffuse any potential further cover-up if there is. Again, I'm just saying hypothetically. Will they doctor these three going forward? I would hope not. They really can't in the face of people like myself because they already released what they did. Those three photos. Anything different and altered will be a surefire, tall tale sign they are in on it. I'm not alleging again they are, but I am warning you if there is some recourse, alteration, justification behind new police releases, something stinks. Time will tell. Hello all, and welcome back to Mind Juice. Wow, what a crazy week or so it has been, which in the grand scheme of things is great, I guess. I mean, for a while there, I began to feel like there was beginning to be some progress in perspective. As to Nicola's truth, that is. However, the more I dig into it, after the latest revelations, the 3 police photos being removed from the official Lancashire police website, the more I began to realize, regardless of the truth, they've already begun to cover this whole thing up. Hear me out. No, I am not coming straight out and blaming the police of such. Such assertion has risen as a result of their chosen actions all throughout this case. I detail that here today, a bit later. No, not one example, but ample. I will get there, like I said, a bit later. Stay tuned, I think you'll be surprised. To the Lancashire Constabulary, why does the smearing continue to take place? I reference the Lancashire Constabulary because they're in charge of the official narrative. I don't know if I should even give it the official title, as I have lost further trust in the police establishment, as you will see. To be clear, I do not insinuate this as some type of umbrella reference. That is, I am certain there are plenty of good officers and higher-up personnel whom are affiliated with the Lancashire Constabulary. However, there are a select few that have caused me more and more questions, and again, I'll get there. Shortly after Nicola was miraculously found, they, the Lancashire Constabulary, present that the police handling is to be subject to an independent review. Lancashire's Police and Crime Commissioner Andrew Snowden is chauffeured in. Further, the Lancashire Constabulary referring themselves into the watchdog, a college of policing coming in to review, etc. One would think this was a good thing. All of them, right? If there was something awry, surely it will be straightened out with all of the national level scrutiny taking place. Well, it appears not so. Or that again is the narrative they want you to buy into. To me, since last week, I have begun to think realistically that in fact it is coming across as more of the same games. Damage control. There are countless examples to show this. Blackpool Lane has seemingly disappeared from Earth. Both Becky and Riley claim that the investigation were said to have been done under the guise of the NCA strategies, which we now know is a lie and wasn't the case at the time. Not my opinion. Look it up. Paul can then apparently summon his friend to diffuse narrative uncovering police, remove whatever they want, scrub interviews, articles from the face of the internet, etc. On and on. We'll hash this out here today a little later, after I present to you today's focus piece. With that said, side note, happy late Mother's Day to all of you amazing moms out there over in the UK. I hope each of you were treated to a blessed and beautiful day over the past weekend. You all deserve it. The world wouldn't be a sliver of what it is without you. Truly. Now, if you are new here, welcome. For starters, I want to recap real briefly the onset of events over the course of the past week, or so. That way this transition makes absolute sense. For the last piece, Tidal Truth, to me personally and in regards to the channel's Nicola Bulley case file, is an extension, which is built upon everything I have already presented here at Mind Juice. If you are a supporter of Paul and Emma, I'll be straightforward with you right out the gate. This piece is not for you, as I believe I provide further context that only bolsters my aim at what has already been a clear and apparent narrative fix by those two. This time, again, using science. After I present to you this last piece, Tidal Truth, I will show you and highlight the irony of Marsh Hall Farm's geographic position in relationship to where Nicola was found and when. Merely 4 days after SIO Becky Smith and Assistant Chief Constable Pete Lawson addressed the media in their infamous last presser, which I now believe also itself may play a role in this wicked narrative. I'm not insinuating either of those are involved, I just have questions. Now, I have hit hard on Emma's behavior, her concealing of the ring, the countless interviews, the misdirection, and not to mention her, Emma, being one of Nicola's friends, air quotes, witnesses of Nicola at the school. Supposedly, we are supposed to believe, come across as a fact, then thus means is truth. It's not. The 3 police photos, Paul dropping, or Paul's friend, the CCTV last Monday, etc. You'll see. The big question is, why does it appear that the Lancashire Constabulary, or someone affiliated with, present to be playing a role in this as well? They want you to believe this is them, quashing the social media ghouls out there. I contest it is them taking away their mistakes, which in turn have, in my opinion, from my perspective, only turn up the heat. Remember, Snowden, the publicly elected official, says the police work was great, the narrative just lost control. No. Like I said, he's a publicly elected official whom in his past has shown to be pretty easy to win over. He is supposed to represent an independent review. Yikes. Hear me out. I'm not asserting, like I said, the whole Lancashire Constabulary. Merely that I now find one, maybe more, that seem to not quite line up with what the vein of an investigation of this sort should look like. I want to present to you some very telling finds that will have you scratching your head by the time we're through here today. Now, like I said, I'm not using it as an umbrella term, yet considering everything I have now uncovered, as you will see, the final piece here shortly leads me in this content to then assess the idea, is there one affiliated within the Lancashire Constabulary that may be, or is, turning their shoulder in the face of rational reason? Very plausible at this point, considering all the developments and misdirection continuing to be doubled down upon. We'll get there. Now, as many as you know, we began this journey here together at Mind Juice into the Nicola Bulley's case just days after she was reported missing, uploading the channel's first content on such approximately a week afterwards. I began from square one, really studying the intricacies of the River Wyre Inconsistencies, really diving into the non-tidal upper river before the weir, the area of the bench, where Nicola was projected to have went missing, or believed to be where something happened. In that time, spent really aiming to understand the process of decomposition, the water levels over the course of those days, etc. Eventually coming to the logical and grounded conclusion, and learning that the unlikely, if not impossible, reality that there is no way she went into the water at or below that bench. If she had, she would have been found that first day or shortly thereafter, as Peter Faulding suggests. After compiling all that I have to present to you here today, I have come to the conclusion that even the most amateur police force, that is, if each member of the force were first day on the job, these types, would have been able to do a better job, right? That is, if we can all agree that they were all trying their best. Yet, under the rule of a 4-decade SIO fixated on the river for the first 21 to 22 days, nothing, nada, nilch. I'll discuss Becky later, as well as Snowden. I have some good things to point out and show, with all due respect. Now, I feel that important to reiterate, as a lot of new followers, or if this is your first content viewing, presume I'm just jumping out the chute, pointing blame, etc. That is not the case. As always, I put the links to the videos used in the content in the description below, and will indeed provide you an avenue to my Nicola Bulley case playlist that you can access at the conclusion of this piece if you are interested in catching up or wanting to follow my logic along the way leading up into this point. Quickly, before we move on, I want to share this quick word from Peter Faulding in the early days, in regards to his conversations with Paul himself.
Well, I was told by Paul originally that, he has to feed any press, any time he talks to the media, it's got to go through the police first. So I don't know. I mean, this information should never have been released to the public. It should have been released to us at the time to help in our search, but never to the public. This is just not the sort of thing you would do on this sort of operation.
According to Mr. Faulding there, as one would expect, right? Paul would obviously need to clear things by police first before releasing any information, sensitive to the case that is. This seems rational, if not common sense or protocol, right? I wonder if Paul, ran the CCTV by the police force before releasing it to a YouTube channel last Monday. Oh wait, it was Paul's friend, so maybe that doesn't fall under the same principle. Rubbish! The friend got it from Paul and indeed did not release it all willy-nilly. Come on now, people. You know that. But really, did he run it by police? If not, it should have indeed raised red flags, right? For if we're all wrong and speculating and conspiracy rabbit hole seekers, what's the need for him to respond and react? Well, I reckon that we're getting close to the truth, that's why. Further, before I get into the Marsh Hall aspect, and this, you're going to want to stay tuned for this, I want to leave you with something to ponder before we do so. Now, we can all agree Peter Faulding has been made the scapegoat by police in this case, right? I mean, Faulding even suggests such himself. Further, shortly after Nicola was found on the 19th, Faulding was nixed off the experts list. Now, to me, I still wonder how and why. I cannot seriously be because of anything to do with his area of expertise or his work, per se. Can it? Sure, he didn't find her, and I can test that's because she wasn't there yet. That's why. Yet, he was nixed still. Well, I suggest it's because he was honest, open to express his truth of findings. Further unraveling and revealing to everyone the police botched attempt to control the narrative, to use Snowden's half-assed smirk-provided reasoning. You're not snowing anyone, mate. Now, this wasn't Faulding's purpose to make the police look bad. No, he was being honest and sincere within the expertise of his line of work. Remember, in the beginning, he said they agreed to have him come as long as he follows their word. Why do they have such a tight grasp on somebody that would be the best in the field? With that said, I think it is then fair to assert there are two camps in this regard. You have those who either support or remain neutral in regards to Faulding, still think there's something not right here, or you have those that support the cops, and thus likely look down upon Faulding, right? And they all think, yeah, he did wrong. There is a clear divide, that's the point. I would bargain Nicola's family, that is Louise, Ernie, Dot, to be clear, are big fans and support Faulding, right? Why wouldn't they be? And not the Lancashire Constabulary Police. In fact, I've even heard rumblings that Ernie's not the biggest fan as to how this has been handled, and rightfully so. But the partner, well, hell, apparently, Paul, he likes them both.
I have to categorically say I cannot fault the police in any of this. They have been incredible. And the relationship that we have working on this is very, very strong. It's very good. So that this isn't any criticism of them at all. I want to make that clear. The river isn't what happened. And so we always felt that the mobile phone and the harness and everything, it could possibly be a decoy. Again, we don't have evidence. The more searching of the river that went on, the more confident we were that it wasn't the river.
Paul wants to make clear he does not fault the police, even though they were transfixed on the river. Yet, in the same instance, in the interview, he also steps up and suggests Faulding and his idea of a decoy is just as plausible, stating that after a while not finding anything, thankfully, we began to think more and more. In my opinion, you can't have it both ways. If she was in there, Faulding would have found her if the police search crews and underwater teams hadn't already found her in that first week. Paul, in this interview, which was on Monday the 13th, the 7 days before she was found, expresses neutrality across the board. I wonder why. 2 days later, the 15th at the presser with Lawson and Smith, Becky Smith comes out blazing, very defensive, likely pissed at Faulding for uprooting their narrative. Rightfully so. The narrative sucked. It was never working to begin with. Okay, maybe in the initial stages, sure, but you don't come out publicly and tell the world it is such. This is our working hypothesis. That's like Investigation 101, which is so odd to me from the start. In this exact presser, the direction clearly shifted. 4 days later, Nicola was found. As of late, Nikki's family is apparently said to be upset with the Lancashire constabulary. Meanwhile, Paul is busy handing out CCTV, making sure to straighten everybody out. It wasn't Emma handing out those photos of Nikki, it was me. Oh, and the police gave me her Mercedes keys as well. Paul very clearly has no fear of the police stepping on any toes. Why is this? Where does he get this certainty? He clearly doesn't have a problem with Faulding or the police. Either one. Is this why Faulding was nixed off the expert list? Are the police actually were they building a case on Paul and Emma? Then the police became pissed because unbeknownst to Faulding, he just happened to roll out a red carpet for Paul to piggyback off of and further suggest she may not be in the river? The police had no choice at this point but to shift direction. Again, Lawson suggested they would be reassessing their resources in the coming days. They did, and eventually took focus off the river, and by George, a few moons and Nicola appears. Now, I have already illustrated in the past, but as a quick refresher, we go back to last Saturday. Up until that point, nothing had really changed in the Nicola Bulley case. That is, after the coroner, James Adeley, came out and issued quiet until inquest investigation takes place. All news media silent. Papers, video, nothing new. In fact, Nicola Bulley's funeral had taken place, and it was not published anywhere. Not even a heartfelt in memory of article. Nothing. I remember very vividly how I found out here in America was I received an email from a lady whom attended, which I greatly appreciated. This is how I found out. Now, I'm not entitled to find out, but you would think that police working in the right vein would still publish something, given it's such a big case and how much coverage it got and how much the world cares, right? Oh, and also, I came across Eddie Vinyl's beautiful tribute to her musically. That's it. The email and then that video Eddie made. That's it. So I went ahead anyways and searched the internet, thinking there had to be something. And literally, the first 7 articles that popped up were in regards to the TikTok ghoul, the 34-year-old man arrested, etc. Literally 7 articles. I screen recorded it on my phone. All regarding Curtis Media, emphasizing that he was slapped with 2 charges, malicious communications and perverting the course of justice. Not to mention the car registration ticket they also slapped him with while he was visiting and filming. Now, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of all of it, but my question is how and why is this the media and police's focus? They're gagged and silent on the case, yet free to slander the hell out of Curtis, one whom I personally greatly appreciate, for if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have been able to have a visual of the area that I have been so fortunate to come across. Thanks, Curtis. These charges were merely 100%, in my opinion, in attempts to silence him, keep him away, quiet. If it was an annoyance to the people in the public, why not work to, give him this advice or express it to him and give him the opportunity to do differently, right? Now, he's continued on other cases doing the same thing. If you enjoyed his coverage here, you should go check him out. He's still over there grinding it out. Thank you, mate. You did make a difference. In fact, I'm about to use some of his footage here, again, which would not be possible without his efforts. Now, perverting the course of justice, maybe they should learn how to remove someone appropriately in a respectful, professional, appropriate way. Sure, maybe the world shouldn't have been exposed to that, but hey, if they're going to get him with that, why not do it right away? Right? It was despicable how they handled that situation. The police, that is. That is my right to express that. It's too bad Curtis was sanctioned with what he was, given all of the good he actually did do. His intentions at the root were 100% within the right line. Again, why do the police have a problem with this? Faulding, Curtis Media. That was the only rumblings since her being found. Nicola. That's it. Then we get to last Saturday. I hit this briefly to provide overall context, then move into the last piece. Not in my work here, obviously, of course not. But the last piece that I believe in terms of proving and legally making it able to be brought forth. Emma White. Her property is linked and related to this whole case. Last Saturday, when I dropped Dear Nicola, really coming out hot against Paul and Emma, which then led to the new CCTV dropping via Grizzly a couple days later via Paul and Paul's friend. The channel holder themselves even offered this as their direct source. So my question is, did Paul have to clear this by police first? I don't know, but you would presume he had to have, right? And if not, such would be a major red flag, right? I mean, I did hear Paul's dad is a detective inspector. And if you look at the ranks of the hierarchy of the UK police, he's pretty high. And given the corruption, again, I'm not insinuating. I'll get there. I have no idea if this is accurate, if this is what Paul's dad does, but I've now heard it from 5 or 6 different sources. I sincerely hope he is not, to be honest. That's a whole nother conversation. In a nutshell, through research, I have a stat here from 2021. I know it's 2021, but it couldn't have changed much, very apparently. Across the entirety of England and Wales, 14,393 complaints were issued against police officers across England and Wales. 14,393 through April of that year. Yes, all within the first 4 months of the calendar year. Get this, only 1% of those were actually heard legally. Further, with 92% of these 1% being dismissed. Yes, that is no consequences. Out of the entirety of the 14,393, 11 individuals actually face consequences. That's it. Yes, I realize not all complaints are founded, but 11? Are you serious? In regards to the Lancashire Constabulary specifically, within those same 4 months, there were 468 complaints against 287 different officers, some receiving multiple. Here, only 6 were referred to official disciplinary process. So 6 of the 11 were from Lancashire Constabulary. Whoa, I still can't believe it. It's so staggering. So staggering. I'll provide for you in the background here a screenshot of all the ones from Lancashire Constabulary that have been ripped up. Sorry, I digress. Continuing on. I then returned to the scene a few days after the CCTV drop, for many fell prey to Paul's games all over again, getting sucked right into the CCTV. So I decided to pounce back, to emphasize the importance of the 3 police photos, suggesting to everyone that the CCTV release was merely more of the same play, different day, by Paul and his friend. It is exactly what he wants you to get lost in, dissecting this and that. Further, as you notice at the end of the intro here today, I played for you an excerpt from my last piece. The key, the 3 police photos. Again, at that point suggesting that if there was any recourse, alteration, and or justification behind new police releases, something stinks. Again, like the CCTV, I projected something of this sort taking place if I was on to the actual truth, right? Shortly after, hours, I made that assertion with absolute conviction. It became clear to me something does indeed stink. My attention shifted laser. I have to find something else. The police aren't listening. Something's wrong. They're already halfway to covering this thing up. Further, I'm onto this thing. I'm not letting it go. Because of the way it seems, like I said, they're already on their ends to covering it up, making Curtis look bad, making Faulding the scapegoat, nixing him from the expert list. Meanwhile, Becky and everybody else in charge just keeps their tight lips shut, and they just keep on going day by day. Nobody knows about the funeral, nothing. And when the inquest comes, it's going to be more of the same. Probably just like that of Michael Brooks, to be brutally honest with you, and I hope not. This corruption crap and these higher up people that have the ability to control narratives is disgusting. Now, I'm not from there. I'm from America, and I've always loved the UK, from my perspective anyway. And I'll tell you, digging into this case has really affected my perception. And I hate to say it, but I guarantee you it's affected a lot of people. It's not for the good. Now, everybody listening to me has nothing to do with you. I've actually met a lot of awesome people over that way, right? The ring, the 3 police photos, now removed. Emma White, everyone. One of the late witnesses to see Nicola, by her own admission. Emma. The front-running actress in this whole mirage, 17-plus interviews. Emma. I could go on and on. I do remember how odd it was Emma's sister reacted to Curtis upon him pulling up to their farm, getting out and videoing that smaller creek, whatever you call it, which reaches out onto the River Wyre. Sure. The sister, she just may be upset, but she did react awfully vicious. I mean, her heart seemed to be pounding out of her chest. She was heavy breathing, and you can just watch her mannerisms. Now, with all due respect, lady, I'm not coming down on you. I don't know your name, but quite odd timing. I can't forget something like that. It had me pondering, thinking in depth. Wait, what did Jason the psychic say again? Nicola, she was first observed floating down the middle of the river approximately a quarter of a mile or so prior to the tree where she eventually found home when the police got there. So I began to study the tidal flow, the timing, the evening prior, that morning, taking into account the idea of Faulding's bloated dead sheep metaphor. After the police shifted focus away from the River Wyre, marked on the 15th of their last interview, just 4 days before she was found, also when they flushed out all the vulnerabilities to the world, she was found less than a mile upstream. Yet was first witnessed retreating back towards the bench area due to the high tide, which means then, wherever she came from, given the fluctuation of high and low tide, can actually be in a roundabout way calculated considerably. Everyone, there is one legit property that resides amidst this back and forth movement, as I will show you, which had not been in the river for 23 days, mind you, okay? She would have been found and or further had been lodged up into something, right? For that is the police's logic, or she was found on the reeds. She was in there the whole time. No. Jason saw her floating down the middle of the water. So this then suggests she was doing such the whole time. That's not possible. Could she have been lodged somewhere and then lifted out? I've already studied the water levels. I've showed you that. They didn't fluctuate enough to dislodge her and move her down. There's a reason why. This is the last piece, and I'll show you. Which means she was placed into the water recently, probably 24 to 48 hours prior to she was being found. Not at the lay-by or over the wall as we first assumed, but through the back fields, private land, creek, exiting Marsh Hall Farm, the home of Emma White. The place we're in resides the red van, the place where Emma's sister lost her marbles upon Curtis filming the approach. The only property, legitimately, within the path of the high and low tide where amongst one would float. Okay, I'm done ranting. Let me get into the science and show you.
A tidal river. So the tide comes in, the tide goes out. We worked on a job a few years ago where a sheep was being carried down on the current on the ebbing tide, and on the flooding tide it would come back to the same place every night, a dead sheep. It didn't move, it didn't go far. If you went missing near an estuary, you could go out to the sea. But things tend to move up and down with the tides. It's an awful long stretch of river with a lot of shallows. She would have been found by now in the shallows. And obviously the water will rise and it will go out every 6 hours. There's a turn of the tide, and things can move out very quickly. We worked on one operation in Kent where a sheep was going up and down the river for 2 weeks, a bloated dead sheep, and it came back to the same point every night. It can go out and it can come back in again. What I do find strange is that she hasn't gone very far. If I would have expected her to go further in 3 weeks than she did, literally a few hundred yards just down the stream from the weir. That's what's got to me.
Feasible that the body could have drifted 15 kilometres to Morecambe Bay?
No, not with this not on this tidal river. In my experience, I mean, things tend to get washed in and washed out. But there's so many bends and snag hazards. It's very shallow down there as well. As the tide goes out, it hits the stones. We had a boat grounded the other day. There's nowhere to go.
So here we're going to discuss Jason's comment, because I think he makes two huge comments that make a huge difference. So in the past, in my River Wyre Inconsistencies, I discussed how it wasn't possible she went in below the bench. Given decomposition, all of that, she wouldn't have made it over the weir. Okay? I've already discussed that. That's what all this is from. Okay? Then here we get to where Nicola was found on February 19th. Okay? And we know from official reports the police were called at 11:35 a.m. All right? And the whole narrative was she was found up in the rush and in the reeds, and this is where Peter Faulding got trashed for, are you sure you searched that area? You didn't see her, I didn't see her, and there's a lot of people saying, he failed, he didn't do his job. Well, that's crap, okay? Because that's not how she was originally found, as we learned from Jason, okay? I want to share a couple messages that he says here. He says, her journey home ended in that tree, but prior to that, she was floating down the middle of the river. Okay? Then, he says, without discussing too much, she was only in the tree a very, very short time prior to that is, in the police report. Then he says, you wait for the inquest. You will regrettably find she was not under the tree until minutes before the police were called. Okay? And then another one, he says, yeah, all psychic stuff aside, I can just clarify that lay-by is not actually part of the situation. If you were to wait for the inquest, the actual initial location of her body is another 0.25, a quarter of a mile away from the place mentioned. Okay, there's two huge aspects here once I really thought about it, okay? Well, aside from the two aspects, number one, Peter Faulding shouldn't be getting all the shame that he's getting because she wasn't up in the reeds when she was found, okay? That's all the smear campaigning going on again. Jason Rothwell, the psychic who found her, claims that when he first saw her, I've seen reports of 0.21, 0.25, he saw her coming down the river, okay? So, to give you a visual, this is my estimation. They're on a walk, okay, coming up this bend, and this will help you visualize it. He's claiming about a quarter down the way. So as you saw in the measurements here, he's seeing her come down, and he said in the middle of the river. And he even jokes in one comment that they couldn't cordon off the middle of the river, emphasizing the fact that he saw her in the middle of the river, which is right here, okay? So my guess is they're walking around here, right? They see something, okay, which eventually ends up being Nicola coming down the middle of the rear. And then he says she only found her, she came home into the tree just minutes before police arrived. So the narrative is she was in the reeds, leading everybody to believe that she was there the whole time, right? As in still trying to play their illogical, nonsensical narrative that she still went in below the bench. Somehow went over the weir and nobody saw her, okay? But that's not the truth, and Jason just revealed that, okay? So this is still out of the water. She was coming this way due to high tide, right? And he claims that she only rested there at 11:35 when the cops were called, okay? Why is this huge? This is huge because he saw her coming down the middle of the river, and it was high tide, all right? And I'm going to show you, I have Fleetwood tidal measurements that are coming from right here, okay? And the way tides work is, not to get too scientific, but The moon has a gravitational pull on the earth, and twice a day, approximately every 6 hours or so, the gravitational pull causes waves to come, right? So when high tide comes in, it's a big wave that comes in and hits, and then that rush of water pushes in, right? That's high tide. And that lasts for about 6 hours. The ripple effect, right? That's high tide for 6 hours. So it takes a while for that inertia and that water push to make it down this way, but you get the idea. And then after 6 hours, it shifts to low tide, which eventually then things start to flow backwards, okay? That's and I'll show you the measurements are coming from here because this is where the waves are coming from the ocean, all right? Now, why is that significant here? It's extremely significant. If you remember, Peter Faulding suggests the idea of a bloated dead sheep. I think it's funny how he says that. Maybe that's my American, just the way he says it. But he said they had a bloated dead sheep that for 2 weeks straight, the dead sheep would, on high tide, go up, and then on low tide, come back, returning to the same point every single evening for 2 weeks straight. Okay? And like he said, he does not believe Nicola could make it out to the estuary because there's too many whips and turns and debris and whatnot, and I completely agree, right? First, he says she would have been found because there's too many shallows. I agree. She would have been found. She wasn't in the river those first 21 days. She just wasn't. I've already proved that River Wyre consistency. I have Emma with the ring, and now I'm going to show you Marsh Hall is right there in the middle of the pendulum that Nicola was likely swinging upon for either a day or two. Right, using science. So why is 1135 so important? If we look at the Fleetwood tidal rating for that day, February 19th, you can look at the measurement here. And I know a lot of you understand this. I'm going to explain it here. On the left side, as you go up the hill, that's high tide, okay? So that's coming in, that's all high tide, right? And I'll demonstrate it with arrows there. And then as you hit the top there and cusp and start to come down like a roller coaster, that's low tide, where it starts to suck back out, okay? Nicola was found at 11:35 a.m., okay? And if you look at the high tide, low tide ratings for that day, it only lets me pick between 11:21 and 11:41. So I did 11:41 because that's closest. Why is it so significant? Because it was at the tail end of the high tide. Okay, so has she not hit this debris here? Yes, it probably would have pushed her a little bit further, right? But not much more, because as you see, as you go over that as 11:41, it's already starting low tide, okay? Then she's going to start to suck back out for another 6 hours, okay? So this is significant because he sees her coming down the middle of the river, and the cops get there at 11:35, and he says just minutes before. He sees her just minutes before. She's coming down the middle, just minutes before she made her way home in the trees, okay? If you look at the graph, this is huge because it shows the end of high tide. And why is that big? Because it gives you a marker understanding the science and the tidal measurements. She would have been on a pendulum, like Faulding says, that dead bloated sheep going back and forth the same point every single night, okay? She's not going to float all the way down here because the tides fluctuate back and forth, same point, same point. This 11:35, given the science of it, bookends her end of pendulum at the end of high tide. She may be a little bit further, but she hit the brush. This is why I don't think she had been floating back and forth for so long a time, because that would be insinuating that she went past it, got lucky, came back, past it, got lucky, went past it, back, got lucky. You get what I'm saying? She got snagged up on it and stuck. I bet this is the first or maybe even the second time she went past it. To not hit that, she got lucky, right? But it's huge because the science shows this is the bookend of the high tide, which is big because, yeah, like I said, she could have went a little bit further, but she would not have made it back. She can't because of, like, the dead sheep. It goes back and forth, back and forth. So, with that said, now can I estimate exactly where she goes back to? No, that's not possible. And another thing I want to show right here. If you look at through, I think I have the 9th, all the way up to the 19th and past, the wave strengths don't change, and this is all based upon the moon, okay? They don't change. So you can't say, well, it would have changed a week ago. You don't know if it would have been further. Yeah, I do, because the science says it. This isn't my opinion. This is studying and understanding the science. If you look at the waves here, I have you since the 9th when Faulding was there and he would have found her, they don't fluctuate too much. That guarantees in cement she would have been in a pendulum, just like the dead sheep, for 2 weeks, back and forth, back and forth. She wasn't in there for 2 weeks because she would have been seen or been caught up in something, right? She would have. It wasn't until after they shifted focus away for 4 days. Now, which day was she put in there? I don't know for sure. But the fact she's coming down the middle of the river, he sees her, and the timing of 11:45 in the science shows its end of high tide, okay? So then you know at that point she's going to, if you look at the graph, you see she'll start to make her way back, okay, this way, right? But here too, she's probably making, like here, you can see she goes pretty quick. Well, just straight shot. She's going to move pretty quick, right? But as she goes up this way, right, it's not like Mario Kart. I don't know if that's a good reference for the UK. She's not going to come up here and whip around these bends like a race car. Like she's not going to. She's going to most likely, ping pong. Not to be disrespectful, but seriously. And then if she kind of gets stuck for a little bit, it's going to take a little bit of the water until it kind of pushes her, and then she'll start to move along again. Maybe get snagged here. You can get the point, okay? It's going to take her a considerable amount of time to get around all these cranks and these turns, right? As she hits here, it's a straight shot, and she's going to start to flow middle of the river, which is what he saw, okay? So the question is knowing that that's the bookend, given the science of the Fleetwood tidal wave, we know she went to only about, like, let's say, roughly in this area, okay? So then you start to go, okay, what is her 2-week dead sheep, not to be disrespectful, pendulum, okay? Because that's exactly what would have been happening back and forth, just understanding the science. Okay, she would have, endpoint, she would have been here, up and around, okay? And then I don't know how far she would have went. And I'll show you later with low tide. So, which is ironic to me as I was doing this. I wasn't even looking to pin Emma or anything. But here, look at this. Marsh Farm. Are you kidding me? Look at this. So, I'll show up on the map here. If you look at the distance from where she was found to the bench, it's like 0.91 of a mile, okay? If you measure here to Emma's farm, it's like 0.87 of a mile. So almost dang near the same distance, okay? So, and my guess is they're going to put her out after the 15th presser because that's when the focus shift, either the 16th, 17th, 18th, right? They're going to be, if they're smart about it, right, which they weren't too smart, and I'll show you that, they're going to try to put her out at the beginning of low tide. Why? Because you put her out right here, low tide's going to start to bring her out. That's what you want, right? Low tide, okay? But as soon as it shifts and gets to high tide, it's going to pendulum her back, okay? Right? This is why I'm saying it's so significant. I don't know if that's how far she went. If she goes out here, she's going to go a considerable amount of way. But the thing is, this is the bookend. This is when the tide changes. So we know she's going this direction upstream for at least 6 hours, okay? So go back 6 hours, which we can't do exactly, but yeah, she flew through here pretty quick, it seems like. But look at this. It's going to halt her time in here, right? And then you have another one, right? You have another big S-curve. Look at this. She's not going to flow through it like a race car. It's not going to happen, right? And as you'll see here, I'll show you, there's a tree branch here that has been broken and pushed over. What's odd about that is it has a yellow ribbon tied around it. Well, the ribbons weren't tied on the trees until after, a week and a half? So you know that tree was standing upright at some point. I highly doubt someone climbed into the water and tied the ribbon on a tree hanging in the water. It doesn't make sense. There's a gate right here too, so it makes you question, did someone back into the gate, knock the tree over, and toss her in? Could make sense. But either way, when I show the picture, you'll see she can easily go under it, okay? And I'm not trying to make stuff up. Look at it for yourself. Then also there's tree brush here. But unlike where she was found, it kind of had like some cave to where you could see how she could go under it and get stuck. The brush that's right here right here, you can see how it would like stop her, but there's nothing she can go under, right? And she's not gonna ramp up onto it and rest. She's gonna hit it, it'll stop her, but as that tide continues to push up, it's eventually gonna push her and to wrap around, and she's gonna keep flowing, right? But the thing is how far does the 6 hours go back? I don't know, right? We're unable to know that. But it's going to be a considerable distance considering how fast she went this, right? But like I said, this big S curve is going to take a lot of time because of the bends and the curves and the branch and stuff here. So, I think the pendulum is going to bring out this way, right? To a certain degree. And then she's going to go back and forth until she's found, because that's the high-low tide, just like the dead sheep up here, back, and she's just going to continue that same motion. That's exactly what's going to happen. Like he said, the sheep. It's exactly what's going to happen, right? Well, here's the ironic thing. Yes, there's other properties, one across the street and whatnot, but look at this. Marsh Farm is right here. This is where Curtis Media is filming, down this water. Oh, and by the way, it's where his sister, as soon as he walks up here, pulls in and starts ripping his head off. I wonder why. Okay, and you can see this. Yes, it's considerably low, right? No body's going to float down there. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is this is all private land, okay? You go here midnight, 2, 3 in the morning, nobody's going to see you. And I'll show you a picture of this exiting here. It floods right out and open into this thing. And like I said, if they're smart about it, they're going to go out about 1, 2 in the morning on low tide, so hopefully she sucks out, okay? But again, depending on when they do it in the morning time, she's only going to go so far. Look at this, because it's going to take her a while to bend these curves, okay? There's just too many of them, right? So once high tide comes back in, it's going to flush her in past up in there. The thing is, it doesn't prove this is exactly where she came, but it proves she passed here. It proves she passed here, okay? Now, could someone have thrown her in there? I'm not saying that's not impossible. And I'm not saying, this is guaranteed off and coughing the nail. How ironic is it that Marsh Farm's right here, right? Curtis Media gets jumped standing right here. And the crazy thing is I'll show you an ad here. I believe Paul and Emma did go here and got rid of her. Either the 18th, 17th, one of those 2 days. And it was just a matter of time before she was found, right? Maybe they hoped she would make her way out, but they weren't very smart about that, because if you look forward, there was a new moon the next day, the 20th. And why does that matter? Because when it's a new moon or a full moon, which happens once a month, it increases the tides considerably, right? Which would increase the pressure and the flow. Had they waited one more night, put her out perfectly right at the end of high tide, low tide, it would have had the best chance to take her out. But they didn't take her. They didn't do that, okay? Which is nice, because they found her on the 19th. You can't say the tides fluctuated that much. I'll show you again. They don't, which shows that just like the bloated dead sheep, she would have been on a pendulum for 2 weeks straight. And we know, given that she was found at 11:35, or that's when the police were called, and Jason says just minutes before, this book ends just by the science, the end of high tide, which means, you don't know, she could have started here and went for... No, I know, because the science shows that day it was measured at the Fleetwood tidal spot. The end of high tide was cusping around 11:21, 11:45, and by the time that comes down, we know that's the end of high tide. She would have then sucked back out, which would have been like the sheep coming back to the same place every time, which would be in roughly this area. Now, the ironic part is there's a stream here on the private property of Marsh Farm. Are you kidding me? Now, some people are going to say, how do you know, they couldn't identify her. She was in the water for 3 weeks. Okay, guys, I understand that, okay? But I don't know if it was her own self-fate and they're covering it up for life insurance purposes, or if it was homicide. Okay, I don't know. But if they have the river idea in hand the entire time, they're not... they're going to do everything they can to replicate that, right? Now, I don't think they're going to keep her up by the road just sitting there for anybody to see her. Absolutely not. Who knows how she was concealed, right? But what I'm saying is that under the shade of darkness, okay, you're on Marsh Farm, there's nothing going to see you here and putting her in, right? Nothing. Like I said, the gate's here, but it's a highly traveled road. That's so dangerous. And anybody parked in there while Nick was missing would have been tipped off, okay? But like I said, why do I think it was within the last few days before she was found? Because when the cops got there, she was caught here in the trees. That's why I think it was the day before. And I'll show you on the maps. I think it was, what time was that? 6:23 a.m. was the beginning of high tide. So wherever she was at 6:23 a.m., wherever she was at, you know, I think if they were smart, they would have come out here after midnight to hit her at low tide to hope that she goes out, okay? However far she goes. But then once 6:23 a.m. hits on the 19th, high tide rushes in, she starts to go back, okay? Maybe she gets strung up on this brush here and goes under that tree branch, gets stuck for a little bit. But she keeps moving, and it takes her a little bit of time to get around here. But as Jason said, he sees her flowing down the middle, and then she gets stuck in the brush there. Now, to say that it wasn't, you don't know it was the day before, well, then you're saying that she continued to float this whole time, and each time she went by here, she somehow miraculously missed it. Okay. Then when low tide kicked in, she somehow came back and missed it again. Each day that you go back, she would have had gotten lucky both on that way and back missing that. Why do I say that? Because this has shown to be something that is strong enough to hook her and keep her there. These other things, I think they could stop her for a considerable amount of time. But as more water rushes and time goes, she's eventually going to be able to wrap around and be pushed around it. Yeah, they may stop her for 45 minutes, 2 hours, but eventually she's going to wrap her way around them or work her way around them. Neither of these can she go underneath and get stuck. You know, here, as we know with where she was actually found, here, she very easily could go underneath and get stuck. I mean, she doesn't have a reverse button to where she can back out. If she has something to where she can go underneath and get stuck, then she's not going to get out, right? These two right here, I think, could stop her, as you can see, but flow eventually is going to push her around, just like as she goes around here. So 11:35 is important because it's the bookend of high tide. Even if she goes here, she's eventually going to make her way back, right? Okay? And then she's going to continue that same motion for 2 weeks, like the dead sheep. And she's going. That's how it works. It's not my opinion. That's science. And the ironic part is Marsh Farm is right here. They have this river part that goes perfectly out into here. I'm not saying they kept her in here. They would never keep her up here by the road. But why not right here? Okay? I know Peter Faulding says that he searched 2 to 3 miles up the river past the weir. So we know this is 0.91, and then to Emma's it's 0.87. So that's roughly 2 miles, okay? Another mile would be right here. But my question is did they stop him before he got here? Because, you know, he has that cadaver dog. I wonder if Peter was allowed to search here. If he wasn't, that's a huge red flag on the police's behalf. Major red flag. If somebody can give me an exact point as to where Peter Faulding had to stop his search, I would like to know. Because if he was ordered to not go up to here, that's a big problem, okay? And even if he did go past here in cadaver dogs, then maybe Nikki wasn't being concealed here. But if you think about it, this is their private land. You know, there's a huge tree here where you can conceal her. You could easily stash her here for a considerable amount of time. Face down, put an old boat over top of her. That water is going to decay her just as much as her being in the water. Nobody's going to be able to get on there. Look how vicious the sister got when he started filming here. They're protective of it, right? So the 11:35 and him seeing her come down the middle is huge because it proves that the narrative of making Faulding look bad, she was up in the reeds. No, she wasn't. He saw her floating down the middle, okay? Yeah, the water went up a meter on the 18th, I believe it was, 17th or 18th, and that's it. Otherwise, it always stayed stagnant. I even show the water levels here, okay? So maybe she got caught up a little bit, but she would have stayed there because that's the only time the water rose. How I know she didn't go up in the reeds, Because had she went up into the reeds, it would have been the water rising a meter up at that time, and she would have stayed there. The fact that he saw her floating down the middle of the river here that day on the 19th morning a.m. shows that she didn't get stuck into the reeds when that water went up a meter. That's what that proves. You know, this is the bookend of the high tide. So this is the end of her 6-hour high tide journey, roughly. Okay, had she missed that, she maybe went to here. But then here's the point. Where's she coming from minus 6 hours, right? And the real crazy part is, look what's dead smack in the goddamn middle. I'll tell you what, if I was an investigator over there in St. Michael's, you better believe you, Emma White, I'd be knocking on your dang door, be putting on my suit, and I'll take the trial to court myself. I have enough circumstantial evidence. The ring on the finger, this whole crap is staged. I have all the science to back that up. I'm going to get to Becky here in a second. This in the science, I would love Peter Faulding to take a look at this assessment, because this shows where she's found right here, bookend of the high tide. What's the other bookend of the other 6 hours? Here? But then guess what that means? She's going to continue in this pendulum nonstop. Guess what's right in the middle? And then she's found 4 days after they switched the church. Come on now, people. Emma, Paul, I'm of the opinion now the police are electing not to do anything. I may be wrong, but your dirty deed shall be revealed, and you shall have to face that very judgment from the world. Now, let me be clear. I'm not asserting or suggesting that all of the Lancashire constabulary is oft or even corrupt at that. I do know and fully acknowledge that in any crime, the more variables and components or people you add to a scheme, the less likely it is. For example, it's easier to get away with murder solo, not telling anyone, going unseen, etc., versus 3 people doing it, telling 4 over a year, someone will crack. You get the point. So, narrow focus. I am suggesting that something may be awry. That is, someone, maybe a few, I don't know, has known all along, are in on this. Why has the narrative remained so transfixed? Peter Faulding was held under certain order. They keep forcing this direction, that direction. A real raw investigation goes with the facts, tides with the facts. They don't cover up, silence, cover up. If nothing is done soon, for although I did entrust Dr. James Adeley, the coroner in this case, from the beginning given his resume, the more time I spend on this case, the prettier the resume doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing, unfortunately. It simply means power to control the narrative. Now, I mean no disrespect to Dr. James Adeley or the 4-decade running SIO Becky Smith, but to be honest, it's perplexing to me how Superintendent Riley was dethroned from the presser responsibility, bringing in the Queen Bee Becky, and she comes in there feisty as all get out, defensive. Further, look at Mr. Snowden here with the Chief Constable. Snowden, supposed to be in charge of the independent review, with the Chief Constable Rowley, just after that 15th presser, smirking it up. After they just slipped the vulnerabilities, doesn't look like it fazed them one bit. I know I mentioned it earlier, the council meetings on the January 26th in regards to them Lancashire Constabulary finishing last and having until the end of March 31st to expend their domestic violence expenses by the end of March, like I said. I'd really like to see how that budget and expenditure sheet looks. If they were able to pull a miracle out, let's say, I don't know, given its military policing, I wonder if this is still public information. If it is, best be certain I'll get my hands on it to take a look. I'll bet they finagled those numbers somehow. Snowden, what a disgrace to the name. Eric Snowden, USA, is world infamous for whistleblowing on the CIA, for their illegal surveillance. Sure, it cost him his freedom to a certain extent, but at least he is not out posting selfies minutes after a boss presser sharing his wine and cheese choices amidst the major search for the missing mom, Nicola Bulley. I won't waste any more time, but I did find that he was involved in the past for allowing a judge to slide by, wherein they allowed fictitious evidence to be entered into a criminal trial. Huh. I know Becky, 5-6 years ago, had a pretty significant drug bust wherein an Ansell and the Rothwell were both a part of the same drug bust, wherein she was also the SIO. I wonder, I'm not alleging anything, just stating it's interesting. Paul does have a lot of business addresses that to me almost appear like shell companies. Moving to this place, this address, that address. And they all seem to fail. Oh, and Rothwell, Jason, also found Michael Brooks, whom had his inquest taken into the same coroner's court, only to leave his mum without answers to this day. The result unfounded. I'm afraid all these glossy resumes involved are going to follow that same line, unfortunately. Regardless as to how well the public can help out, it doesn't matter. The track record, historically, shows corruption, narrative spewing. Take a look at this rubric I have here. This is all the things the Lancashire Constabulary has done in this case alone. I've already hit on most of them. Why was Faulding nixed? This bothers me. This is the chief reason I don't think anything good will come out of this. He didn't deserve it whatsoever. Give me a true valid reason. Whoever had the power to do that and had him removed has the power to brush this case under forever. Paul, the CCTV release, coming out and saying it was me, not Emma, who handed out the photos. Oh, and by the way, the police gave me her Mercedes keys back. Jason, no offense, bud, leaking the details as to Nicola floating down the river when police arrived. Isn't this perverting the course of justice as well, like Curtis got? It seems like it would be. I wonder why one got in trouble and the other two didn't. Lancashire Constabulary wipes their Facebook, which very clearly, to a certain extent, was allowed to be controlled by Paul for some time there. Take a look at these posts again. Sure, they claim it was a mistake that they let the vulnerabilities out in the presser earlier that day, yet they go and post these, which go into extreme, disgusting detail, detailing Nicola's darkest skeletons in her closet. Yeah, they erased them now, just like they've erased everything else, just like they changed the Garstang Road to Blackpool Lane. Everybody can see it. This is the biggest, worst cover-up I've ever seen. Removing the 3 police photos from the Lancashire Constabulary police site. No memoriam during her funeral. Yet, Becky, you say the case thing most important to you is her family? No, it's not. Your actions are anything but that. It's about making you look good. Not wanting to face the humility, in my opinion. This case needs to be raised higher to the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. I hope I pronounced that right. Home Office, Prime Minister, I don't know. That is not my expertise, and I know people are probably laughing, but someone like the Peter Boleskis, Mr. Faulding, and countless other detectives, Michael Thomas, definitely not the Hardings or any of those blowhards, but the ones who have spoke up publicly as to the gross mishandling of this case. If you hear me or this, someone has to get this review and investigation higher up. Snowden's a joke. College of Policing comes in and changes Blackpool Lane. The missing persons manual is changed days after on the website. Oh, everything's getting changed. It's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. The wool is being pulled. I realize some may perceive that I'm sitting over here sounding arrogant and I'm tooting my own horn. People, please, again, it's not about myself. This is about Nicola. It is merely me repeating the significance of said revelations. They did in fact happen as I just stated. If those 3 photos I harped on were not significant, Paul's friend would not have dropped that CCTV. And further, when I doubled down attempting to clarify the 3 police photos, which Paul's friend attempted to smear with the release of the CCTV, which worked to a certain extent, and you can still see it today, people are still wondering. But I didn't waver, yet dug deeper. Once I drilled this point home, came out against the CCTV, revealing it for what it was, why were the 3 police photos then removed that same day as well? Removed from the police site. Sure, one can reason either it's because, they're doing an investigation and I'm blowing it, or they're trying to protect the... It doesn't matter. Why hasn't the snakery, games, evil manipulation, intimidation, Superintendent Riley threatened legal ordinances if there was any more, and then Becky be misconstrued, and you get it. Why haven't they continued on as normal? The whole watchdog review rubbish is merely a larger scale ruse all again, attempt to fool the public into believing they are now getting it right. Bullshit. If the scrutiny, the watchdog, the College of Policing inspection were legit, then how in God's name could Paul and his friend come out and drop CCTV to a YouTube channel, which, on its face, one would think, wow, way to go, buddy, releasing sensitive information makes you look real good, especially amidst all the watchdog deep dive assessment into their work. Really think about it. They're supposed to be under all this scrutiny, and Paul goes and does something like that. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know if it's his father, or I don't know what the hell is going on, but something's corrupt. I can tell you what, I have every ambition to go over there and want to visit, but definitely not now. I want no part of that. Who wants to live in a world like that? Then like I said, the 3 police photos, only to find out hours after I release my latest content, they disappear, vanishing into thin air. But like Paul said, I know that things just don't vanish. Someone knows something, someone did something. Thanks for the advice, Paul. Of course, had it simply been the police removing the photos, that would be fine, right? I mean, maybe it was because the case is awaiting an inquest till June. The social media goons won't let it rest. People are being blamed. It would be best to just have them removed. Or you are working on the investigation, like I'd already mentioned. And the rumblings happening out here in the social media world or sphere are hampering such. I could understand that as well. All in all, the realization I have come to since last Saturday, Paul didn't like emphasis being placed on the 3 police photos, dropped the CCTV, then really didn't like to double down on them and call out of his same game, different day. How can all these games still be going on? Really? The truth I have realized, even if the Lancashire Constabulary Investigation Officers team whom confronted this investigation missed her case from the very first day, even if they were the most amateur, universally, all first day on the job, could not have possibly handled things this way, been as incompetent. So what does this mean? Why does it look so bad then? I suggest it's merely the other way around. A really bad attempt to play the role in the scenes of a missing mom whom apparently fell into the River Wyre. Yet they failed miserably at selling this. They know that and have known this. Even Snowden says, completely unprecedented exposure. I mean, yeah, okay. Good police work, but the narrative lost control. He's got to go. That is why it is important to keep the pressure hot, so they can't get to inquest, or else, watch, it'll be unfounded. Much like Michael Brooks had already said, swept further under the rug, because whether you like to face it or not, it is already well on its way. Their actions show this. If I was wrong about the CCTV or the photos, why has Paul received no action for his perverting of justice? Right, Becky? I mean, if you're willing to slap Curtis with the 2 counts, like I'd said, which are obviously only getting him to stay quiet, come on now, we're not stupid. Finally, I want to hit on a few key aspects from Becky's interview that I found quite interesting, and then I'll wrap things up here.
Those hypotheses included the one that she possibly could have gone into the river, that there could have been third-party involvement.
Kind of stumbled there on the third-party involvement.
I think it's clear to see that the amount of effort, hours worked, resources that we have put into this investigation, that we have always been open-minded.
I wonder how all that hard work, the resources, and whatnot have been budgeted. Did that happen to go to the areas where you needed to use the funding?
But as Mr. Dawson has said, at the minute, with the information that we have received and reviewed, there is not a single piece of information or evidence to suggest that there is any third-party involvement in this investigation.
But there's an incident from January 10th that's still under investigation, and no arrests have yet been made per your Facebook account. And Nicola's Fitbit was unsynced 3 days before she went missing. Here's my question. Why was Nicola wearing her Fitbit that day if she knew it was unsynced? Now, to me, how were either of those not a single piece of evidence by which a senior investigator of 40 years doesn't at least pause at?
That was normal. And she then proceeded, after chatting to a couple of people in the school yard.
More ghosts. We know she talked to Emma. Who's the other one? No one stepped forward. I'm not saying she has to, but I have yet to even hear of anything. Who's this other couple?
Walked up Garstang Road and onto the river path over an iron bridge that takes you down to these fields.
There's one example as to why the name was changed from Blackpool Lane to Garstang, because otherwise she'd look really, really smart there getting that mixed up.
We know that because there are witnesses who have identified her, and also from her phone data.
You mean just her phone data, because the one witness is, again, the ghost with the white dog who has no identity.
We know that Nicola entered the field and made a couple of messages on her mobile phone.
So you don't know that Nicola entered the field, but you know that her phone did.
We know at this time that there were a number of dog walkers in the area, and we've been extremely fortunate from the very start of this inquiry to have a number of witnesses, key witnesses, who know Nicola. So there is no miscommunication about the identification of who was in that field.
Well, we know you lied about the lady in red because you said they interacted briefly with their dogs, and she came out and said that never happened. I'd like to know who these number of witnesses are, and how is there not miscommunication about who the identity was in the field? You have yet to produce one single sliver of evidence that she was even actually there. Also, check her facial expression at the end of when she says it. It almost looks like she's lying, like she's got something, like she looks to make, I don't know, something's off with it.
And also, we've viewed a substantial amount of CCTV. Again, whilst we can't cover the whole area with CCTV, we've been really fortunate in that we've had a lot, which has really been able to help us in pin down both Nicola's movements and also the movements of key witnesses.
So you're insinuating CCTV has been able to give you info on Nicola's movements. I can test this means you don't have her anywhere, therefore you think she didn't go that way, which is my new hypothesis on why you think she went into the river, because you don't have her anywhere.
So Nicola was last seen in the field, which we've called the upper field, at about 9:10 that morning. At that time, everything seemed normal. She was walking her dog Willow, who was off the lead. And again, a number of issues and inconsistencies have been raised in relation to Willow and her harness. It was really normal for Willow not to have her harness on. They never kept the harness on when they were in that field.
Two things here. So we heard early on from Emma, or as Grizzly says, it was a male friend. I don't really reveal my sources, that Rowan Waters' camera wasn't working. She later says, Becky, that it is working. And she's saying that 9:10 in the upper field she was seen. So that would imply then that Nicola actually is on CCTV in the upper field. If she's not, then Becky's lying about the Rowan Water CCTV. And the other thing I was going to say, you'll notice right here, she really does try to drum home the idea of Willow's harness. It's normal, the harness, which is one of the decoys. She also does a really intentional purpose of drilling home. It's normal for Nicola to carry the phone out in front of her, why it's not in her pocket. It's normal for Nicola. She was seen carrying it in front of her. Those are both decoys. And Becky, coincidentally, makes it a point to emphasize both as normal.
Harness would be taken off Willow when they entered the field and would only be put back on when they were ready to leave the field. So at approximately 9:10, a witness that knows her had the last sighting, and that was at the upper field. And when I say an approximate time, it is that, but we are basing that on obviously the times that we can say that witness left the field. So I'm quite confident it is around that time. We then know from digital data that at some time around 9:20, we believe that Nicola's handset had moved towards the bench area. Again, there have been questions raised about her phone whether that would have been in her possession when whatever happened has happened. But again, I'd just like to point her out that it's really normal for Nicola, when in a Teams call, to be holding her phone out in front of her, listening to it. And we can say from a witness that knows her that morning, that is what she was doing. So that would explain why she doesn't have her phone in her pocket, as I know a number of people have raised.
How can you say it's an approximate estimation of when the Upperfield witness left the field? So you're suggesting that you know that because you saw him on CCTV, but then you suggest that Nicola's phone via digital evidence moved she slips there, to the bench. How can you see the last witness leave the field via CCTV and not know what happened to Nicola? You see him leave, but you don't know anything about Nicola, but you know that her phone moved. This is, again, where they're implying that she went into the river.
That witness makes a number, before returning home, she then returns and makes a number of phone calls to people, because at that point she doesn't know who the dog belongs to or who the phone belongs to.
She's referring to Penny here. Now, I don't know if it was Penny or the daughter-in-law, but wasn't the original narrative that she had to go because she had an appointment? Well, Becky goes, she returned home, she returned too.
Just moving on to CCTV, like I've said, we are really fortunate in this inquiry that we've been able to narrow down a lot of the witnesses in the area's movements and to some extent Nicola's. But we can't complete that totally. The area at the top of the field, Rowan Water, has CCTV that covers the gate that enters the field and the front of the site. That is working, and we can say that Nicola has not entered that area or left.
So here it's very cryptic, but Becky says via the Rowan Water cameras, they cannot see Nicola enter that area or that she left. But this is where the last witness sees her, and where they say they witnessed the last guy to see her leave the field via these same cameras. So how was he the last one to see her? You can see him leave via these cameras, but Nicola never enters or leaves this area. You don't have her on camera anywhere.
The second point on CCTV is allotment lane. Again, we've been really, really fortunate, despite it being such a rural area, that we've got numerous sites of CCTV on that road. And that is why we can be confident that Nicola has not gone down that road.
Again, they don't have her on CCTV, the allotment lane either, but you got the lady with the prom. That's the running thesis here. They don't have her on CCTV absolutely anywhere, but they have the harness, phone, and Willow, so their assumption is, and working hypothesis is, therefore then she went into the river, which is failed logic because someone intending to commit a crime would know how to avoid the CCTV. Duh.
Unfortunately, the main entrance and exit to the fields is via the river path, as we refer to it. And that river path goes back to Garstang Road.
Here's the second example as to why they changed Blackpool Lane to Garstang Road.
Fork off slightly, which takes you at the back of the Grapes pub, which would bring you back onto the main road. But again, that is covered by CCTV, and we know she hasn't left via that entrance.
Again, what's the theme? We didn't see her on CCTV forking off behind Grapes pub. You keep hearing it. We didn't see her here. We didn't see her here. We didn't see her here. That's not a good basis for a working hypothesis. Therefore, then she went into the river. If anything, there's not a single piece of evidence to suggest there's a third party. Well, January 10th is one, the Fitbit's one, and the fact that you don't have her anywhere on CCTV, she's not a magician. Like Paul said, she didn't vanish into thin air. Come on now.
What I can say, which we've established only yesterday, was that if Nicola had left out of the river path and turned right, she has not reached the Grape pub. And we can say that because we have CCTV covering both sides of that pavement.
Well, for one, it wasn't Nicola at the River Wyre that day. And number two, you're right. It was Emma who did leave to the toilet, as Ron suggested, in the caravan park.
Whilst other people may speculate and spread rumours, there is no evidence whatsoever or information, and there has been a vast amount reviewed, I can assure you, in the last almost 3 weeks to suggest any third-party involvement or Nicola leaving that field.
See, this is the problem with this investigation approach. They take the logic that if there's nothing there, it means that can't be true. Like, I don't understand. Like, sometimes the fact that there's nothing there should create curiosity to dig deeper, right? Like, the fact that Emma's not on CCTV anywhere, like, oh, there's no third party, she had to go in the water. Like, what the hell? Their entire theme of, like, mind juice is if there's not something that says go here with a green arrow, to them it is like illogical. I don't understand.
So, whilst my main working line of inquiry at the moment is that Nicola, based on the information known to me from the incident and
it's real subtle, but you can hear Becky imply there about the incident, which I would assume is the January 10th incident, which, again, like I suggested, Paul's masterful engineering was most likely part of the whole ruse to begin with. But yet she's saying, based on the incident and the particular vulnerabilities provided by Paul, why are you giving him so much credibility?
the red van. We're really, really grateful to members of the public for ringing into the inquiry. We wouldn't have got this far without everybody's help. But I think it's also really obvious that we are being inundated with false information, accusations and rumours, which is distracting us from our work.
How would it be obvious to the public that you're being inundated with false information when people are genuinely trying to give you tips that would help? I mean, that's such a cocky comment, like such a condescending slight.
The red van has been reported that it was in the area on the morning of the 27th, like many other hundreds of cars that morning. We're really grateful for the witness who has told us about that, and we are continuing to make inquiries to try and track down that specific van. But from my perspective, being in possession of all the facts and information of this case, I do not believe that to be suspicious.
There she goes again with the attitude, like many of the 100 cars that day. That tells you right there she ain't listening to it. But here's the irony in it. The Marsh Hall Farm has a red van, and it very likely was involved, right? So either she's in on it and helping them cover it up, or she just made herself look like a complete fool, which she'll never admit. And why I say it's going to be completely covered up. She's never going to face the music on that. Come on.
Something around Nicola's vulnerabilities.
All right, I had to end it with that. There's something about vulnerabilities. I love when he says that. It's so funny. Oh man. I know it's been a week since I've posted a video, but let me tell you what. This one here, my brain's like a dried out raisin. There's a lot of mind juice that went into making this thing. I hope you guys enjoy and appreciate that. All for Nicola. I'll be back soon. I think that whole idea of the 11:35 and Jason's comments coming out of seeing her originally floating down the river needs to take the scrutiny away from Peter Faulding. But I think the fact that he did get nixed, not to be negative, but someone big's got to step in, because it looks like the independent review that's going on and all these people that are supposed to be righting the wrongs, they're not. Look at Paul. He's out here pulling maneuvers, and anybody like us out here that tries to do anything like Curtis, they get slapped and get told to be quiet or else. I mean, it's just the militia police doing what they do, I guess. I don't know how to cope with that. I don't have that here in America, thankfully. But yeah, I was pretty hard on Becky there, but I don't I can't tell. I don't know if it's just they're literally like incompetent. Like they literally bought into the incident, the vulnerabilities, she's a high risk misper like she says, and they genuinely believed it so much that by the time they actually realized it might be something else, it was too late and they don't have any evidence to back it up. Like literally zero, and then all of a sudden the body's put back into the river. I mean, think about it, guys. It matches their hypothesis. So they, in a stupid way, a decade down the road, can be like, well, yeah, we suggested she was in there the whole time. That was our working hypothesis. Oh my God. It's just like duct taping the freaking ending onto it. It's a joke. I can't even. I mean, I feel bad for being so critical, and I was kind of an ass there to Becky. I'm usually not that way, but I just get frustrated because of the way it's being handled. Like, just because you don't have anything doesn't mean it's bad information. Like, that means you got to dig deeper to find something. I still can't get it out of my head. Her Fitbit was unsynced for 3 days prior to her going missing. She's wearing it that day, which tells me that she's not aware that it's unsynced. But it also tells me that if someone wanted to premeditate doing something with her, maybe it'd be a good idea to unsync something that could track her. Why can't they understand that? I mean, I honestly, it makes me want to run my head into a wall. I don't understand. I just hope somebody good steps out and be a hero here. I mean, Peter Faulding did. He stuck his neck out there. I just hope somebody that has power, James Adeley, I don't know. Like I said, their resumes bother me now. They didn't even, I hate to say it, the writing's on the wall. They didn't put a lick of anything about her funeral up. Nothing. They did a no-fly zone and charged all the media channels and all of the news places to write articles about Curtis and how malicious his communication. Get out. I mean, you can already see the way it's going. It's just like one of those 14,393. Nothing's going to be done. I mean, look at that chief constable smiling with the, I don't even want to say his name. I mean, come on. You could take it seriously whatsoever. This is a joke. I guess at the end of the day, they see her as a means to make the bottom line look good and whatnot. I mean, looks like Paul duped them. I hope they all sleep well at night knowing that. It's a joke. All right, everyone. And last thing on some of the comments are saying, oh, one guy, I used to work for CGI, you gotta do better work. Guys, the police photo with Emma and the damn ring is the only place you're gonna see the ring. It's not in that video. Why do people keep trying to find? I don't understand that either. Okay? Like in CGI, yeah, exactly. That's your point, right, man? I'm in reality, okay? I'm not trying to be in the CGI level, right? I don't need to un-CGI a manipulated video. It's clear it's manipulated. Isn't that enough to make sense that you're not going to find what you're looking for? That's the only point I was trying to prove. And I don't understand. I still keep getting people saying, well, I can't find. There's one photo with the damn ring. And guess what? The police removed it off their damn website. Now, I'm trying to tell you, I've been pounding this drum home. It's their only one. Nobody believes me. I mean, people do. But you still got people out here going, well, I don't know if there's a ring. Why the hell did they take it off the goddamn website? Think about it. Come on, people. Jeez, I don't understand. Anyways, I love each and every one of you. You've been great. You've had a lot of inspiration to my life, and it's been awesome. So, alrighty, everybody. Until next time, mind juice out.